Buenos nachos, amigos, and welcome to another fantastic episode of Record Breakers. I'm Petey Rave, your man with no plan, but plenty of hubris. Already declaring this a fantastic episode, even though we haven't finished recording it yet, because that's how much I believe in my product, in our product. Here with me, as always, is my team. We've got Patrick.
Hey.
We've got Drew. And we've got Brett.
I'll drink to that.
We're here gathered to talk about music. As always, don't need to say it. You know what you're here for. The provider of said music is finishing his sip right now, and it is none other than Brett. Brett, how's that Coors Light?
It will kill a werewolf.
Yes. What do you got for us this week?
Well, obviously I've got the straight edge, so I decided to bring an album that I thought you guys ought to listen to. It's the only studio album from Minor Threat. The album's called Out of Step. Rarely is it heard by itself. On the Spotify playlist you'll find it, but if you see the compact disc that has all of Minor Threat on it, it is most of that.
Yes, most of it.
Plus bubble violence.
Plus all that. Bless you.
Sorry.
It's all right.
My edge is straight.
Yes. Patrick, what were your expectations coming into this record?
So the aforementioned compact disc with Ian MacKaye and his boots and his bald head that has everything Minor Threat ever did is something I've had in regular rotation for many, many years. So I've heard all of these songs. These are, I guess, weren't the Minor Threat songs I was most familiar with, but I was familiar with them.
Drew, what were your expectations coming into this album?
If you're watching the video recording of this album, you may have seen me walk off camera while Brett was speaking. I don't know what Brett was saying at that point because I was walking over to get a prop. I might be familiar with the band that we're doing. Yes. For those of the audio listeners, I'm holding up a belt that says drug-free with some X's on the side. I may be familiar with the straight edge music scene. I might be familiar with the band that coined the term. I might be very familiar with the yelling / half mush mouth of one Ian MacKaye. I might have known what I was getting into before this, and I might be surprised that Brett swiped another band from me that I should have been doing and didn't.
Do you eschew sitting around and fucking your head, hanging out with the living dead?
Yes.
I think Drew's got the straight edge.
The straight edge
song's not on here.
Yeah. No, you picked the one that had none of the icon songs.
We bring albums to this show.
Yeah.
If it was singles breakers.
Yeah, if it was
3 EPs like
song
Petey.
breakers.
If it was demo tape breakers, I think we could have done a pretty good job.
Love Exterior hadn't come out with a studio album yet.
The thing is, the Minor Threat did have an album, so I had one to choose. So
exactly,
I won't judge Petey incorrectly.
Yeah, but yeah, let's get into it. Brett, how would you describe this album musically?
Well, it's like a minute longer than the A side of 2112. That's one way to describe it. There's not a whole lot of it. But I've always really been drawn to power and drive, especially in this subgenre of a subgenre of punk rock. I don't want to oversell this. First off, anybody listening that is living the straight edge life, as I'm holding a fishing lure bottle opener and talking with it, anybody who is a part of this subculture, who lives and breathes it, I know it's multifaceted and there's a lot of different things. I'm going to be wrong about it, so I'm going to try and take the straight edge out of the Minor Threat as much as you possibly can. And if you're pissed off, put it in the YouTube comments because that's where you're going to be anyway. And I won't read them.
If we're going to be fair, Brian Baker doing drugs took the straight edge out of Minor Threat long before this show happened, so you're fine.
Yeah, but I have seen the militant side of the straight edge community, and although I was a kid,
High Courage Crew, how you doing?
it was weird because I went to punk rock for a different reason. But no, I'm not trying to judge one thing or the other. I would like to say one of the three tenets of straight edge living was not by choice, but I wasn't getting laid, so I was not promiscuous, which is my favorite part of the straight edge movement that a lot of people don't get into. But no, this band is, this is the type of music and the type of band that when I think of a bassist and the drummer having a great relationship that could either make or break an album, this is one of those examples. The bass and the drums are completely in sync. The bass is it's extremely dynamic, and it keeps up with the drums, which is no short order. Many of the songs actually start out with solo bass. It always sticks out in the mix. The drums on this album are what you would think of classic hardcore punk drums, but it has the add of there are flourishes and fills that are shoehorned in places you don't expect that to be possible. It's very much hardcore punk rock of the era where this is my brand of punk rock. This is a very special part. Now, mind you, the vocals kind of do sound like somebody was eating methaqualone, although they weren't at this point.
Ian MacKaye still doesn't, but that's... Look, I'm not here to speak the story of straight edge. Sorry, I'm gonna do that from time to time.
We're not lifestyle breakers. I'm bringing this album simply based on the fact that this is an album that was in skate parks, that was a soundtrack in everybody's leather-bound CD binder. This is something that I wanted to bring because I'm sure not everybody has gone down this dark path and come back to speak of it, and I'm happy to see what you guys have to say.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, how would you describe this? How would you describe this album musically? What would be the themes and elements that caught your attention?
So if you look up the word hardcore and you specifically look at the early 80s hardcore movement, Minor Threat is like they're the band, or one of like three or four that really define that movement. Bad Brains, Black Flag, those are sort of the big three for me, and I know there's some more like SSD Control and stuff, but those three I think are the
SSD Control.
They're the American ones.
We're gonna start talking about SSD and Judge and
and there's a lot of others, wistful. But like they were one of the seminal bands of that movement, and that is a huge movement in music, and really like the early punk stuff. You had like bands like the Clash, which kind of wandered through genres. You had the Ramones, who want to do everything. And then the Sex Pistols, who were kind of a boy band, in all honesty.
Oh yeah, that John Lydon's a real. I want to smooch on him.
Yeah, and then so Minor Threat to me, like Ian and really Ian MacKaye specifically, because I really am a big fan of one of his later bands, Fugazi, where it just musically is more my thing. But Ian MacKaye was just this intense ball of anger and emotion, and he put it through in music better than almost anyone ever has. There's no whining on a Minor Threat record. Ian MacKaye is just screaming the world to stop sucking, and that is sort of the sound that they had. It's very intense. It's very it doesn't try to be pretty. Although sometimes there's little specks of it. It is just the music matches the emotion, which is just intensity, and it's super concentrated, crack cocaine punk rock, and which is ironic because it's the whole straight edge thing. But like it is super concentrated, made in a lab to be the most intense thing, one of the most intense things ever created musically.
Drew, how will you describe this album musically?
Well, in describing this album, I'm sort of going to do what I think we've all done. This is Minor Threat's only studio album, so it's kind of our only chance to put a fine point on what Minor Threat is as a band, because this album is distilling what the demo tapes and the EPs and the bits that you got from Minor Threat was. This was their chance in the studio to do something about it, because it came after a point where like they had not really talked much for like I believe a year or two. At that point, they had not really been a band at that point for a couple of years.
Rockers, go figure.
Yeah, like all of a sudden, like, but they had something, and they knew they had something, and that's this album sort of gets into like the weird friendships that like sort of are part of that, and like how the scene is sort of like fractured itself, and like that's a big like that. It seeps into this record, so there's a lot of that. Knowing the history of Minor Threat helps you understand where that comes from. The straight edge thing, as I joked about, there's been reports of past band members not really being straight edge anymore. Obviously, they were never ones to have the movement, the term they coined just sort of as a thing. But like, it's really one of those bands, like Patrick said, that it's intense. And for the people that connected with Minor Threat, there is a lot there from this band. They are what DC punk rock was, period. Like, Minor Threat was able to create this sound that at once was nothing that was going on and then became a lot of what's going on, and they never set out to do that. This was not planned. This was anger. This was anger and energy coming out of a group of guys, and that's, to me, what punk rock is best at, is anger and energy being solidified around music that's still good to listen to and fun to listen to for a group of people. It's something that's just cathartic. It is something that is really great. A Minor Threat, you can still to this day hear the influence that Minor Threat has had on the hardcore scene, the hardcore punk rock scene. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of times I walked into like a shitty local club and heard the Quaalude vocals that somebody's trying to imitate Ian. Like, it's just what Minor Threat was. And this album portrays that to a T.
What about whiny punk rock? What are your thoughts on whiny punk rock? Compare whiny punk rock to Minor Threat. What, you know, yes, I hardcore punk rock, that period, I guess. Yeah. Sorry. There's some whiny stuff in punk rock. To me, it came later, but like, to me, like I said, it's ain't your grandpa's punk rock.
Punk rock at its best has a twinge of contempt and anger for people, yet they're accepting of people that are willing to be smart about it. And that's kind of what you were saying, the energy of Minor Threat sort of brings.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of brings that's kind of where to say that. Brett, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Oh, I got like minutes of songs to talk about here. I'm gonna hit the stuff that really hit. I mean, Minor Threat, of their like handful of songs, any one of those is better than some of the worst that we've listened to, even in the dregs of Minor Threat's live recordings. But It Follows is it's a punch. It is one of those easily chanted choruses that you can just imagine somebody in a club singing along to. The beat's strong. It doesn't overstay its welcome being short. Honestly, I can close my eyes and travel back in time to the late 90s to DK Skate Park, back when I thought I was indestructible, and just hear it bouncing off the Masonite boards. Yeah, it's just one of those songs that has a little bit of sweet memories along with it. Think Again is a song that has really great bass. It's on an instrument that has been proven time and time again that it's not really necessary to stand out in the punk rock genre. It was really pleasant to hear the bass guitar be in the forefront of a track. And Little Friend, that's one of my favorite tracks. It has these really great rests. The beats hit so hard and it's going so fast, and then it stops. And there's nobody tooting their saxophone when they shouldn't be. It's everybody hits it flawlessly. It's got a driving beat in a genre that is built off of a driving beat. This has one of them. This is what you would call a real toe tapper. This is a song that really encompasses my preferred brand of punk. Yeah. And this is really songs like that was what made me bring this album to you guys to see what you had to say about it.
Mm-hmm. Patrick, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
I'll double down on Think Again as being just a really, really great song. So the first two tracks on this album are super buzzsaw punk, which is fun and great. This is, you get a really good guitar melody that isn't just, a pure, a play as fast as you can sort of thing. And you get to hear a lot more musically. The opening track, I'll do a little Record Breakers thing, Betray. Not my favorite Minor Threat song, but God, if it isn't a microcosm of sort of the intensity of the band. And then for reasons unclear to me, the last track, Cashing In, which is sort of this weird satirical romp through Ian MacKaye's brain, being sort of, Ian MacKaye being one of the guys who very much defined the notion of, the DIY punk movement and doing stuff that's more focused on fans and sustainability rather than, bands who make money, who are entirely profit driven. And I understand that most music is somewhere in between, but that is very much the beginnings of that movement, and, how he ran Dischord Records and how, the bands he went on to play and would only play, relatively cheap shows that they thought fans could afford. And, had sort of the notion of being, we're going to make music, which does cost money. We have to charge something for it, but we're not going to, we're not here to, rape and pillage. And the whole song's sort of a satirical joke about bands who do. And it for me, being a fan of his later work, it is one of the early signs of who Ian MacKaye would grow up to be in a few years.
Drew, what would be some of the key tracks for you?
Well, I'm going to start out with the Record Breakers thing. Betray, staccato, fast drums, that half yell, half mush mouth, drugged out sound from a guy that didn't do drugs, and Ian MacKaye. All of that, like Patrick said, it's a microcosm of what sort of made Minor Threat, and made the DC punk rock scene what it was. Is right on there. Also, something about the beat dropping out in any fast song like this, I think is fun. Look Back and Laugh. It is I have gushed about Minor Threat. The one thing about Looking Back, and I will also parlay that into Cashing In, is they're just just a bit too long. There's a point where I'm like, oh, okay, I get the song, and then it keeps going. And like in hardcore punk, I feel like get the point, hit it, leave. Like that is why a lot of hardcore punk is like 3 minutes or close to it and out. Like, and it's just a little bit overwhelming, but it's Minor Threat. It's still a great song. And then Out of Step. Out of Step is the one on this record to me that if I were to try to pick my top 3 Minor Threat songs, it would be the song Minor Threat, Straight Edge, of course, and Out of Step. And Out of Step beats out Guilty of Being White by like this much. Because I just think it's one of those songs that is just a fan. There was a point where we curated lists for a friend of ours, known on the internet as Demon 5. We curated lists of rap and punk and emo music so that he could understand what those genres were about, because he was interested in getting into music. And if he was more like, if he asked for a strictly like hardcore punk rock sort of bend to those tracks, this would have been on that short list for me to shove in there. Because it's just one of those songs that's just so much fun.
Yeah. Just fantastic track. We can bring it back around town for some conclusive thoughts now that we talked about some tracks. Patrick, what will be your conclusive thoughts on this album?
So as I said at the top, this isn't my favorite Ian MacKaye band, and it's not even my favorite set of Minor Threat songs. I really like their first EP, but I get it. They made one record. This is the one we're going to do. And it's still really, really great. I mean, this is... if you're into any part of punk, I feel like Minor Threat's required listening. They were such an influential band, not just in hardcore, but you know, in sort of the notion of punk having important things to say. Because up until hardcore, it was, you know, the Ramones, you know, want to do things, and you know, the Clash, who did say things, but also were kind of, you know, occasionally a ska band, or you know,
there's nothing wrong with that.
No, there's nothing wrong with it, but like
those Dead Kennedy guys.
Oh, they were Dead Kennedy, but a lot of Dead Kennedys was saying shit to say it because it was, you know, ridiculous. But like this, it's such an intense ball of emotion for a record without being whiny emo, which I also love. And if you technically want to go through the trail of music, you can kind of blame Ian MacKaye for emo because he produced the first Rites of Spring record, which is, you know, often cited as the beginning of that movement.
This is Record Breakers, not People Breakers.
No, I love
anybody. We are not here to blame people for bad music. Unless it's an album that somebody brings.
There's nothing wrong with Rites of Spring.
Yeah. Like this is the beginning of someone who, in my mind, was very important to music. And, you know, I'm not going to discount the rest of the band. The guitars are tight. The bass is terrific. Punk drummers go underappreciated because it's, you know, it's not like Rush where like there's crazy drum solos, but like being able to be fast and tight and not just, you know, do you know, blast beats is important, and that's really done well here. But like I said, I'm a fan of Ian MacKaye, so I'll talk to him.
Did you see where some of these musicians ended up?
Yeah, some of them ended up in really good bands.
Yeah, like Bad Religion.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another excellent punk band. So yeah, go listen to this. Damn it. That's sort of my conclusion.
Read the Wikipedia page, yo.
Yeah. Drew, what would be your conclusive thoughts on this album?
There are certain bands that, because of like what they've done, it's hard to be like sort of like put any point on it. There is the Minor Threat, by just the sheer fact of not wanting to be like this huge thing became something that was important to the punk rock scene, to show that, as Patrick put it, sustainability in music is something that can be an awesome thing. They created a lot within the genre, and they did a lot for it. And Ian MacKaye has done a lot for it, for better or worse. And I think it's personally for the better. I think the music that came out of Minor Threat was something that was just fun. We were having a discussion in our GroupMe, and there was an old guest of ours that has stuck around the GroupMe, and we let him stay there because he's a nice guy and he listens to all of our shows and he gives us feedback about it. So we let him stick around.
Smarter than all of us,
and he is smarter than all of us.
Younger. He has better hair.
Yeah. You gotta love those locks.
Dial something back a little bit. But I will agree with the smarter, better musician. I will agree with all of this. And to him, if he did listen to this, I'm sorry. Because he does not understand at all punk rock. This is not the album that will convert him. But for those that dig on some punk rock, this is something that I think Minor Threat, and since it's Minor Threat, it's this record, is something that if you even have a sort of, I kind of like punk music, listen to it and understand where like the hardcore movement, like what's great about it. And Minor Threat is one of those bands. We mentioned SSD Control. I could go on about like the melodic, like hardcore stuff, like the Gorilla Biscuits type stuff like that. But like Minor Threat is just a band that started a lot, and they deserve a lot of credit because it was so good.
Brett, what would be your conclusive thoughts? What would be your ending thoughts?
Well, this is definitely not like the beginner's guide to punk rock. This is the dark chocolate. This is the dark roast, the stout beer version of punk rock. You don't come to this without having some sort of taste. This is the actual Thai hot pad Thai that you go to the restaurant for when your butt wants to burn. You know, this is the stuff that you know, it came from a place that none of us, we weren't around in the late 70s, early 80s in Washington D.C. and had to deal with that.
This album came out when I was born. This is the year.
Yeah, I mean, like we weren't in that world, so you know, I can't relate to it personally, but it is something that has lasted longer and probably has outlived the importance that even the people that created this music thought that it ever would. And it's something that if you want to have like a little educational journey into the history of it's a subgenre of a subgenre of punk rock. This is hardcore, straight edge, and DC punk rock. I mean, it's everything that is not easily accessible to the common ear. But if you have, luckily, you know, anybody who's made it this far has probably listened to this album, so you know this is something that is worth hearing. Even if you don't like it, it's good medicine, so that you understand something that was so powerful to be able to make it through. Like this made it through every other band that was making punk rock in a basement somewhere, and it is being talked about on the internet by us assholes. Yeah. So obviously, it's at least worth listening to for the fact that we brought it.
Yeah, that's our power. Yes.
Yeah, we're tastemakers.
Oh yeah, we're trendsetters.
I was gonna say, are we Mentos?
Yes, we are the fresh makers.
We are.
I wish I had Mentos around here.
Mentos fresh and full of
the Foo Fighters song
Cue the
video.
Foo Fighters song, yeah.
Oh my god, yes.
I got to
that Foo
roll
Fighters
around
video.
on a park bench that got recently painted, so that I have a pinstripe suit.
Yes.
You know what? If you're old enough to know what I'm talking about, you know who Minor Threat is. So
Yes. So yeah. But yeah, those are our thoughts on Minor Threat.
Also, our thoughts on 90s commercials. So,
So there's that. At least some of our thoughts on 80s commercials. We can go on forever on that. But this is not Nostalgia Breakers. This is Record Breakers. And now we go to the next step, the next phase of our podcast, the next, at least of our episode, the next act. We get to a main event of the evening. We are to our haiku reviews. Patrick, what is your haiku?
Hardcore's beating heart, where Makai's legend began, so much in 3 years.
Drew, what is your haiku?
the band that started a movement and a style in the studio.
My haiku. These straight edge legends play some quality punk tunes, all with energy. Brett, what is your haiku?
Punk rock variant. It's a real punch in the guts, much more than its parts.
And those are our thoughts on Minor Threat, all wrapped up in with a little bow on it. So you can go ahead and follow along, listen to the Minor Threat on our Spotify playlist. Listen along at home, play Record Breakers the home game. We'll try to keep that updated for y'all so you can follow along. And
It's a really good recording of it. It sounds better than anything I listened to it on. They did something to it.
Remaster.
Yeah, there was a remaster in 2000.
Yeah, that sounds way better than what I had.
Yeah.
Yep.
Way better than a lot of people had. Yeah, go check that out. On our Spotify playlist as well will be next week's album, which is provided by Drew. Drew, what do you got for us next week?
Well, after listening to all this punk rock, I thought, maybe we should stay on the. No, we're not going to stay on that train.
Chic?
I'm close.
Oh.
Not close. Kind of close. We're going to take a sharp left turn. We're going to go back a few years to 1981. And we're going to do a band that I think needs to be talked about in light of recent happenings. I think that a certain band needs to be brought up. And in memory of a great composer and great singer, Maurice White, I'm going to bring in Earth, Wind, and Fire's Raise.
Yeah. Earth, Wind, and Fire. It's going to be a fun week for us and a fun discussion for sure. So we look forward to that next week. But that's next week, and this is this week. And this is now, here and now.
You can find Petey at.
You, of course, can find us all over the internet. Patrick is at Swagger. Brett is at Hibbity Ribbert, HIBBITYBIBBARD. Drew is at XDruciferX. I'm at PD Rave. The show is at 4 Record Breakers. That's the number 4 Record Breakers. RecordBreakersPodcast.com. RecordBreakersPodcast@gmail.com is the email. Email us, please. Rebelli.net for this and other shows. YouTube.com/RebelliTV. Subscribe.
He does other
share.
things.
Yeah.
He does.
Yeah.
What else do you do, Petey? Tell the public. They need to know.
We do Fanny Pack. We do Hellujuku. I promise this year we're going to try to be consistent again. I've kind of been following.
Good luck.
Yeah, I know.
This is the whitest show Petey does.
Yes.
I guarantee it.
I guarantee it. Go check it out on there. Subscribe, like, share, do the things. Until next time, hasta los huevos. Also check out twitch.tv/RebelliTV.
He plays his toast sometimes.